All right, today I can practice solving quadratic equations with quadratic formula and completing the square by practicing. So nothing new for today's lesson. We're going to practice. We're going to have a quiz at the end, just like a 1 or 2 question quiz, and that's it. There's not much for us to go over. I'm just going to go over 2 questions just to refresh, but there's nothing new here. You'll have the whole period to practice. So let's do number 2. First off, which should I use, quadratic formula or completing the square? Well, I can use either of them, but one is going to be really challenging to do and one is not. Since there's an a value that's bigger than 1 or other than 1 and b is odd, it would be very difficult to do this using completing the square. Because of that, I'm going to use the quadratic formula. If a was 1 and b is even, then I'm comfortable using completing the square. Again, if you're not sure what to use, if I were you, I would just always use quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This is in the proper form, so I'm going to list my a, b, and c values, 2, 3, 2. X equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times 2, all over 2 times 2. Go to your calculator, type in what's inside the radical. 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times 2, negative 7. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus radical negative 7 over 4. Off to the side, reduce the radical. Well, there's not too much to reduce here. All I can do is take the I out, because I can't have a negative inside of a radical. And then I want to break them apart because there's an I involved. So negative 3 over 4 is negative 3 over 4. Plus or minus I rad 7 over 4 is I rad 7 over 4. So which of those choices is equivalent to one of those answers? It looks like choice 1. And for choice 1, they just kind of put a 1 in front and they just move the I to the back, or in fact, they didn't move the I to the back, it's right there in the middle. That one is equivalent. Choice 3 is close, but choice 3, there's no I, so that's why you can't do that one. Obviously, it's not 1/2. And there's a rad 7, so it's not that one. So it's just a matter of substituting into the quadratic formula and completing that process. So I just want to go through one more. It doesn't really matter which one. Let's do number 7. And I'm just going to do this using both methods. So you get some practice with both methods. If you want to try it on your own first, go for it. You can pause it. But I'm going to solve this using both completing the square and quadratic formula. I'll see if I can even do it on the same page. So this is in the proper form for quadratic formula. So I'm going to list my a, b, and c values, 1, negative 6, 25. And I'm going to substitute into the quadratic formula. 6, again, negative b, if b is negative 6, negative b is positive 6, plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 25, all over 2 times 1. I go to my calculator and I type in what's underneath the radical. Make sure that negative 6 is going in parentheses. If it's not, you're getting it wrong. 4 times 1 times 25. I got negative 64. Off to the side, reduce the radical, the negative becomes an I. 64 is on my list, so it becomes 8i. So it becomes 6 plus or minus 8I over 2. Do your little triangle. I can take a 2 out of all of them. So it becomes 3 plus or minus 4I over 1, which is just 4I, and that's your answer. Now I'm going to do the same exact problem using the completing the square method. It is not in the proper form for completing the square. For completing the square, I need to bring the constant term to the other side. And then it's time to complete the square. So I'm going to make my blank square on both sides. To determine what goes inside, it's b over 2 squared. In this case, b is negative 6 over 2 squared. That's negative 3 squared, which is 9. Factor the trinomial normally. It's always the same factor written twice. Minus and minus. Square root of 9 is 3. The right-hand side you can combine. That's negative 16. Rewrite as a binomial squared. That's completing the square. To solve the equation, I take the square root of both sides. When you take the square root, you get plus or minus. Add the 3 to both sides. We get 3 plus or minus radical negative 16. Well, off to the side, radical negative 16 becomes I rad 16, which becomes 4I because 16 is a perfect square. And my answer is 3 plus or minus 4I. Same answer, 2 different methods. You can use whichever one you want. If A is 1 and B is even, like it was here, then I personally like to do completing the square. But my suggestion to you, if you're going to pick one to get comfortable with, quadratic formula will work on any quadratic nice and easy. Or by easy, I mean there's really no twist to it. So it's up to you to practice this for the rest of the period. You'll have a 1-question quiz at the end. And that's it. If you practice it, you should be good with it. Any questions, let me know. And that's it. Practice, practice, practice.